Thank you. So my opening question is, what does it take to become a professional athlete? And I feel a little bit of a fraud even asking that, because I've never got further than downloading the Couch to 5K app. But we're just going to skirt over that bit and talk today about the National Lottery. So you may be aware they have actually been helping to fund our Team GB athletes since 1997. So over the course of that time, we've had over 1,000 medals that have been won in that partnership. And although the medals are super important, it's also all about the athletes' journeys. And the stories behind those is what really captivates audiences. So podcasts were the perfect platform to be able to really amplify that partnership with their Team GB Olympic Paris activity. I'm going to be talking to the wonderful Jenni Falconer and Nat Littlechild in a moment. I'd first like to show you a little sizzle reel, though, to talk about why podcasts are so important with emotional engagement.
It's only a therapy session, and it's free.
The best podcast. Rather it was pink, but it's okay like this. Thank you.
What on earth is going on there?
Slay Queen.
Slay.
Yes. Put your knickers on and make me a cup of tea. Never ever do that again.
Sponsor for this episode, HSBC UK.
Tesco Mobile.
Airbnb.
Number 7.
I want her urine tested.
Let's be honest, first impression.
Oi, you two, in here.
There's something bigger going on.
A bloke, but you can also appreciate a cushion.
Very obscene.
That's a really interesting fact.
Because people didn't expect you to win 2 gold medals in an hour. Well, that's it, isn't it? If he loses this fight, that is it.
We come as one now.
I'm 60. I go to bed about 1.
Hilarious.
Ardin Punjabi is far. Oh, far.
You're going to be a child forevermore, I've decided. It's much nicer.
So podcasts impact our emotions and change our habits. And although most people, over 90% of people, are actually listening to podcasts on their own, it's a really, really deliberate act for human connection and engagement. We have genres covering all different emotional states. So whether you're listening to a highly emotive conversation in Dirty Mother Pucker or laughing along to something in Luana, they all have a different role to play. Comedy, for example, 68% of people say they are listening to comedy podcasts to lift their spirits and feel as though they're hearing from friends. Now, this feeling of conversation, bringing this connection and community spirit is really something that is what we need to make great content in this space. We did a series of research papers. We've got a code at the end, which you can download at your leisure, but we wanted to really understand audience habits and feelings. So we now know that 92% of people who listen to sports podcasts feel it is an emotional experience. Again, conveyed in comedy, people feel it is like being part of something. 74% of people with listening to podcasts say that. And 69% of those who listen to news podcasts say it's actually a more uplifting way to consume news than other types of media. And the podcast universe continues to expand. It entices in content creators across a broad spectrum of titles. So whether that's unique interviews, in-depth analysis, or some really beautifully crafted storytelling, there is opportunity for all in this space. But there are 4 million podcasts. That's a lot of podcasts, 87 million episodes across the spectrum. But loads of different types of people are creating very successful podcasts. So whether you've got news presenters, gold-winning athletes, pop stars and comedians, there's a space for all here. But how do you ensure that your campaign gets noticed? Well, we are the VIP podcast experience. So with DAX and Global, we have over 50 years audio expertise in the commercial audio space. We work with the talent in our building. We've worked with them for many, many years and know how to deliver flexible brand messaging. And finally, we have amplification. So we have a full global estate to be able to cut through those 4 million podcasts and really make your messages heard. And we can also connect your podcast campaigns to the wider global audiences. So we have a full 360-degree solution unlocking all of the different touch points at Global, and this is an offering that is obviously unique to us. So whether that's across our radio stations, Smooth, Classic, LBC, Capital, Heart or Radio X, across our brand visually, you can amplify across our out-of-home estate, a huge reach across Global's social channels, or finally activating opportunities at a podcast live event. There is so much scope there, and this amplification was perfectly demonstrated with a partnership we had with the National Lottery. So I'd like to show you a little sizzle reel, first of all, that just shows some of the highlights, and then I'll welcome the guests on stage.
Financially and with funding, who supported you?
We do owe a lot of thank you to National Lottery.
The National Lottery.
The National Lottery.
That has been the game changer.
What I would love to see is before all the professional athletes get on out there at the Olympic Games, I'd like to see someone like me just give it a go beforehand, just so we know how good they really are.
Babes, Team GB are in Paris this year. I am going, I am buzzing.
I'm in the centre of Paris at the official Team GB house, the Team GB lounge. It's actually a stage, a band set up.
I can't say thank you enough. National Lottery players are the biggest funder of Team GB and Paralympics GB athletes. I would not be here without you.
Whichever sport you love most, it's a time to be inspired by so many incredible Team GB athletes.
Alex Yee and Beth Potter.
Adam Peaty!
Tom Day! Haley Hodgkinson!
Sky Brown!
The support we've received from them as gymnasts, I think for many years now, but as a sport, it's changed the game completely.
Well, people talked about 3 years ago in Tokyo how badly the British Olympic rowing team did. They got 2 medals, a silver and a bronze.
Right, yeah.
40 years ago, my first games, if we got 2 medals, we would have been dancing down the streets. But that's where it is changed, and the National Lottery has been the big key element for that. I can't emphasise that enough.
So please welcome to the stage, Jenni and Nat.
Hello.
So we have with me Smooth Radio and RunPod host Jenni Falconer. Very, very well placed to be helping to deliver sporting messages out in Team GB House. And I didn't realise until yesterday that you actually did 9 years on doing the actual draws for National Lottery on TV.
Yeah, 9 years, twice a week, pushing the button. Did anyone win? Because I'm old commission. Nope. I think that's the way it works.
But £10, you used to get £10 for 3 numbers. Now you don't even get anyone. Anyway, that's, yeah. So, and then Nat joined Allwyn, so at National Lottery back in 2019, having had a stellar career at Zenith. So Nat was very well placed to help steer the brand messaging that we wanted to get across and making sure that the content was also delivered and interesting for audiences. So it was a pleasure to work with you during the partnership. I'm going to start with a very simple but obvious question for our setting. Jenni, I'll start with you. What podcasts are you listening to this week?
Well, obviously, apart from RunPod, which is the greatest one out there, I like the Rested Entertainment at the moment. I don't know if anyone else listens to that, but a couple of episodes a week. And I'm a runner, and I tend to listen while I'm running, and so it's good because it kind of is. I'm listening on the days it's released. So I'm here today. Well, I would be listening to Tuesday's episode if I hadn't missed it yesterday. But
we're going to say we purposely said don't say global ones. Nat, what are you listening to at the moment?
Yeah, we were talking about this. I also love The Rest is Entertainment, and I have been learning about male actor hairpieces this week because they were talking about hair transplants, and it was truly eye-opening. But I think the chemistry between Richard and Marina is amazing. So we were talking about this.
I was saying, now I'm going to go and look to all the actors wearing hairpieces throughout all big blockbuster films. So let's talk about the partnership and how it kind of came about and what sort of results you saw from it. So Nat, if I start with you, how was the idea formulated? Were podcasts always going to be a big part of this, or did that come later down the line?
Yeah, I think when we were thinking about this campaign, we wanted to make a connection between the players of the National Lottery and the athletes across Team GB and Paralympics GB. And I think nowhere is that sort of connection more evident than in that kind of podcast environment where you have listeners have such an amazing relationship with the hosts and with it's such an active media consumption, what they're choosing to listen to and when they're choosing to listen, that we really felt like to be able to tell those amazing stories and have that sort of genuine conversation, it just felt like such a natural fit for us. So we knew that we wanted that to be quite a central part of the work that we were doing to tell those stories.
Yeah. And Jenni, you had Nicola Adams, OBE, as your guest for your branded episode. So how was that conversation? Was it quite seamless to be able to sort of talk about the National Lottery and the funding that she had had?
Yeah, I mean, it's really easy. The point of RunPod is to talk about the feel good of running and to kind of motivate the listener to go and do exercise and be active. And so you want a guest that is of that feeling as well. And obviously Nicola Adams is very much into her sport, and we know her as a boxer, but she's a very keen runner. And in fact, her initially when she started out, running was one option that she was considering. And so she was such a great guest, and also to then record the episode at Team GB House, which is what I did, just brought a bit more excitement to the whole episode. And we were able to then bring in the National Lottery funding quite nicely and seamlessly, because obviously it's made a huge difference. And I know from hosting the draws for years, we had Dream Number, and the whole point of Dream Number was to go towards London 2012, and still to this day, the National Lottery is amazing when it comes to helping fund the athletes that we are going to see champion, at the games. And so she found it really easy to bring that in and to say thank you. And it's important when, as the host of the podcast, you want to, on a branded episode, you want to involve the brand as much as possible, but you don't want it to be like a big clangor of an advert as well, because it's just not of interest as much to the listener. So if you can integrate it into the conversation, it makes sense. Everyone's aware that it's a branded episode. You're not hiding that, but you don't want it to be a kind of a stop down moment. Here's an advert, because that's what sets it apart from doing a host read.
Yeah. And that whole kind of authenticity, this is where I do think branded episodes work really well, because you've got an existing audience, an existing kind of content structure and tone, and being able to work in a message, especially one like this, that actually fit very naturally. And Team GB House obviously had all of the athletes buzzing around. What kind of atmosphere was it like while you were actually there? I know.
I foolishly booked my holiday
Yes,
across
that was Mara.
the Olympic period, but that's a different story.
Well, apparently it was very busy and bit of a party the night before, and I went there first thing in the morning, and everyone was still in bed.
No.
I got it when it was empty. I had been the night before, though. Oh my goodness, it was fun. You can't believe that this is a room full of athletes. Quite frankly, they were all having quite a good time. Quite rightly, they'd been performing really well. It was just brilliant. I've always wanted to go to the Olympics. I've always wanted to go to be a part of it and do stuff with Team GB House as well. So this year to be able to do that from my point of view, it was exciting. And so it also gave such a nice edge to sell the episode as well to the listener.
Yeah. And it really helped because we were broadcasting live with our various radio stations out there. And then we had podcast studios that we actually built in Team GB House as well. So it felt like everything sort of came together from an audio perspective. Actually, on that point, Nat, how did you amplify the partnership? How did you take it out beyond the sort of podcast as a central part?
Yeah, I think that's one of the reasons that we kind of worked with Global, was because although you've got that kind of depth of experience and talent with the hosts and the kind of podcasts that we worked with, there's also the opportunity to reach, to kind of have that reach and scale. So we used quite a lot of different formats across the whole campaign. So everything from, obviously we had the brilliant branded episodes, but we also had host reads, live reads, we had BTAs that ran across the network of stations, still using our athletes and having that authentic voice, but just kind of doing it in a way that was kind of gave us that kind of opportunity for scale and a little bit more kind of reach, and then had the kind of depth of conversation that we had through the podcast. It was, for us, it was a really helpful kind of way to wrap everything up in kind of one place, really.
Yeah. And did you have any concerns at all when you went into the podcast element specifically, or did you feel that you kind of worked quite well with the hosts to be able to be sort of guided through any of those concerns?
Yeah, I think it's like Jenni was saying, it's what you absolutely don't want is there to be a big change in tone from the amazing kind of conversation that you're getting to a kind of, this is a branded message, and kind of to have it feel forced and not natural. But I think what was really reassuring from our perspective was great, the kind of roster of talent that Global kind of has within the podcast environment, and the matchup of hosts and athlete talent as well was really, really strong. So we wanted to make sure that there was a good connection. And then I think just making sure that it just felt authentic, and we were really reassured on that point by, the passion and the kind of enthusiasm that both the kind of podcast hosts and obviously then our athletes bringing that to life. So for us, it was really important that it didn't have that kind of really clunky change in tone as we went through.
Do you know what, the same as well for me? I mean, I'd already created a mini series within my podcast called Going for Gold, and it was all about Olympians. So I had, Dame Kelly Holmes, I had Baroness Tanni Gray Thompson, I had, Ewan Thomas, I had lots of different athletes that were going to be in the studio in London. And so when the opportunity came to work with you guys and do an episode from Team GB House, it just really fitted seamlessly in with what I was doing. And because we had been talking about the National Lottery as well, we'd been mentioning it. So actually it was quite a brilliant, a perfect fit, really. And also it meant that we got to take an episode on the road, and it made it a little bit more exciting, and we felt more a part of the Olympics. And the whole idea and the whole premise of it is to motivate and encourage and enthuse the listener to get up and exercise, even if generally they're couch potatoes. It doesn't matter. The fact is that by listening to this kind of athletic episode from an athletic kind of arena, that hopefully it would work. And it seemed, from my point of view, it was just a joy to do.
Yeah. Did you have much say in who the athlete was going to be that featured in your episode? Or?
Well, I mean, generally, I'm very much in control of every episode in terms of writing it and the editorial and booking the guests. And this was the first time I had no control over booking the guests, and it was the most horrific thing, because I was like, who are they going to offer? And there was a few offers, and I was like, yep, I love them. They don't run, and you're like, oh, okay, we need a runner, and I'm like, well, yeah, it's RunPod. So that's the other thing you've got to remember, at the heart of the podcast, you've got to be true to your episode. So yeah, brilliant to talk about the Olympics, but also we've got to make sure that we're satisfying why people listen, and that's to get some running motivation.
Yeah.
And so we have to talk about that as well. So when Nicola Adams was suggested, and by the way, I only had like two days notice with this. It was a quick turnaround, but I think that's what's great, because effectively when I'm making these episodes, being a one-man band, I'm kind of able to kind of adapt to it. And it means that if you have an opportunity to do something, you can move and respond and get everything quite quickly. However, it would have been nice if I'd had a bit more notice. I could have asked for listeners to give in questions, maybe. Maybe we could have had a second guest, which would have made it a more even better conversation. I could have recorded some out and about. So there are things I would have done differently had I had more notice. However, even with just a couple of days, it was perfect.
I'm just hearing that there's got to be a partnership for LA when we go out there and we just do this as round two. Jenni, what advice would you have for any brands who wanted to do these sorts of branded podcasts, particularly working with RunPod?
Well, I think we've said the word authenticity, and I think that's so true. It's got to be a brand, for the host passionate about it, that you believe in. I'm talking to a few brands at the moment which are just a perfect fit because they're of interest to me. So the conversation and the bringing them into conversations and easy. It's not a difficult thing to do. Also, it has to be in keeping with the podcast messaging, I believe. So there are some brands that I wouldn't want to be associated with RunPod because it's not right.
Yeah.
And so I'm quite selective on that point. But it's important because listeners are tuning in. You want something that works for the kind of listener that's tuning in. And then I think as well, you have to make sure that it's something that it's not too clunky a sell as well.
Yeah, and I think this is why it worked so well, is these are actually stories, I said at the start, that you want to hear. You want to hear how the athletes were. I mean, Nicola had been almost a sort of babysitting issue, I think, when she first started doing her boxing and her mum had taken her down to the club. So, Nat, this wouldn't be a brand-led conversation if I didn't ask you about the results. Were you pleased with the overall outcome, and would you do this sort of activity again?
Yeah, absolutely. I think from a delivery perspective, obviously kind of exceeded our expectations. And I think what's great for us is looking at our player types. It really reached more of our kind of lighter player group. So for us as the National Lottery, it's really important to get more people playing a little, because that's the kind of ethos of what we're trying to do. But I think overall, What we have seen is our brand metrics around awareness of funding of elite athletes and Olympic and Paralympic sport increased by over 10 percentage points and higher than Tokyo. So for us, that was a massive, obviously we always compare to previous Olympics, but it's really important to make sure that that message is being delivered. And then our other brand metric that we use a lot is relevancy. So looking at awareness of good causes that are relevant to me, and the fact that we also saw that brand metric really shift across the last couple of months is obviously is part of the overarching campaign and not just down to this, but this played a really fundamental part in that because it is the athlete stories that we're trying to tell, and this being the best articulation that we had of those really important stories.
Amazing. Thank you. Well, it was great to work with you on this partnership. We're pretty much out of time. The only thing I do want to encourage you all to do is to scan this code, and it has all of the 3 research papers that we've done across key genres in podcasting. And thank you both for joining me.
Thank you.
Thank you. I think we just wait. Hello.
Amazing. Thank you so much. I've got a really indulgent running question.
Okay.
Can I ask you? I mean, you've had some amazing guests on the show. People like Johnny Davis, who's run the tube lines. He's gone and run all the capitals. Adele Roberts, amazing, went on and did the marathon. Who's on your list of people that you want sort of proper runners, or do you want people that have kind of come into it late? Anyone on the wish list for RunPod?
Listeners love people that are like them. Love people that are like them that hate running but do it. That's something that's obvious. And they also like really incredible stories. There's a man called John McAvoy. I don't know if you've heard his story. And he was someone that was actually spent quite a lot of time in prison in his 20s. And then he found running, and he actually found rowing in prison. Turned his life around, and now he's like a Nike athlete. Amazing. But his story was phenomenal. And so people like that with incredible stories, or people who have found running and it's changed their lives. Yeah, that's to me something that's really interesting. And Jake Gyllenhaal.
Jake Gyllenhaal. Can we make that happen? Yeah, maybe we can make that happen. Maybe next year it's got to be Jenny and Jake.
That would be good. Can we work on that? Thank you.
Very good. We'll make that happen, and it's all sponsored. Wonderful. Amazing. Thank you so much. Give a massive hand for Global. Thank you.